Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning we're going to talk about budgeting with the 80-20 rule. So let's jump right into it. So when you think of the 80-20 rule, you may think about Pareto's principle. At least that's where my mind goes. And what that refers to is that 20% of your work produces 80% of the results. And so with that, when you are applying that to your personal finances and looking at this principle, this rule, this rule really focuses in on giving you flexibility within parameters. So in my research, I came across an article by Forbes, and Forbes went into explaining the 80-20 rule and where it came from. And so they stated that it originated from Vilfredo Federico Damaso Pareto. Say that 5 times fast. Imagine having that name walking through the town square. But he was born in Italy in 1848. He would go on to become an important philosopher and economist. Legend has it that one day he noticed that 20% of the pea plants in his garden generated 80% of the healthy pea pods. The observation caused him to think about uneven distribution. He thought about wealth and discovered that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. He investigated different industries and found that 80% of production typically came from just 20% of the companies. Generalization became that 80% of results will come from just 20% of the action. Now, applied to budgeting, this 80-20 rule focuses in on paying yourself first, paying that 20% to after-tax savings. So with that, even though I don't believe the Pareto's principle was necessarily tied to that 80-20 rule for this budgeting tactic, I believe that there's a lot of wisdom in paying yourself first to focus in on those aspects that can have a compound effect in a positive direction. So saving 20% of your income for savings for retirement is a great way to have a very positive rhythm built into your monthly finances, even if the other 80% you're not real intentional with. So being that there's 2 categories that this 20% would be applied to, which is after-tax retirement contributions and savings, you will then be able to spend the rest of that 80% on anything that catches your eye. If you use this tactic, would be to make sure that you are living within your means, that you are spending that 20% to put away for the future, and you are allocating that 80% for your living expenses, but no more than that 80% and no more than the 20%, so that you are not living above your means. Now, you're probably wondering, if I literally have 2 line items to my budget, why even have a budget? But with that, it gives you a good way to have a starting point. So anyone who's never held a budget before, this gives an opportunity for you to step in and not get overwhelmed. It allows you to step in and commit to at least breaking your budget up based on 2 different categories. So if you want to create a budget like the 80-20 rule and want to find a free resource for that, I would recommend that you go to everydollar.com. So if you go to that URL and you sign in the upper right-hand corner, you can then create an account now and follow the steps to create my account. So create a new account that then you can go through your goals and then populate your budget accordingly. So with that, when you are looking at applying an 80-20 rule, the starting point is those 2 sections. And so I want to show you today how to break those out and how to look at those from a standpoint of at least getting a budget going. So once you create the new account in your everydollar.com URL and you set up that account, it will prompt you to create your first month's budget. And so with that, they'll go through a process of helping you figure out your goals. And then from that point, you'll go to the first month. In this case, as I'm looking at this budget and this individual, I'm going to be basing it off of a household income of $65,000 per year. So with that is a gross annual income for a family. And so with that, what we're going to look at is actually netting that out so that we get a net pay that you actually would receive in your bank account. And so based on this family taking home about 70% of their gross income, they have a planned income of about $3,800 per month. So that line item would go under income. So basically that would be the net pay to your bank account on a monthly basis. So that would be your 2 paychecks per month, or your every other paycheck, every other week that you're paid that flows up into your monthly bank account, balance. And so with that, for this family, they have a planned amount of receiving about $3,800. And so that would be the first line item that you would put in that budget. Now, being that we are following the 80-20 rule, we are going to be looking at lifestyle at 80% and saving at 20%. Now, that 80-20 would then break this $3,800 figure into those two categories. So the first things that you want to look at is you'll see a bunch of different categories that will not apply to you in this first month. And so you'll be able to delete all the line items under those specific categories, at least for now. And so what you want to do is get rid of the categories that don't apply to you that would all be captured under lifestyle. So you may be a giving person and still give to a charity or a local nonprofit, and that is perfectly fine, but you don't need to break it down in this initial budget. And so with that, you may consider to get rid of the giving category for now. You may be looking at getting rid of housing, transportation, food, personal expenses, as well as health, insurance, and debt. And the only purpose of getting rid of that would be in order to break it down based on that 80-20 rule. So based on that, the first item you'll want to look at is savings. So savings will be post-tax retirement and savings at 20%. So that would equal about $769 that you're going to be putting aside to save for a rainy day fund or for retirement. The second aspect that you're going to look at is the 80% that will go to lifestyle expenses, living expenses, and that is about $3,076. So really what this looks at is really simplifying this process and looking at how you can build a budget just to get you going, so that then you can look at your bank statement, look at your credit card statement, and enter those specific costs related to saving and retirement, and those specific costs related to your living expenses. So if you have budgeted before, you're welcome to go on to the next step, which would be tomorrow's episode on the 50-30-20 rule. So that's basically going from a process of the 80-20 rule, which is a good start, to a better budgeting strategy with the 50-30-20 rule. And then landing at what I believe is the best aspect of actually having a zero-based budget, which looks at all of the categories. So this may take you 45 to 60 days to get the hang of actually tracking your expenses and inputting them into something like Every Dollar. But it will pay dividends in driving down your costs and allowing you to know exactly where your money is going. So my call to action today is to look at whether you've ever had a budget before, and if you have not had a budget, use this as an opportunity to utilize the 80-20 rule so that you get a baseline to go off of. Then you can build from that point. But once you are putting this into place and you are allowing for this rhythm and allowing for this habit to be formed, allow yourself to spend that 45 or 60 days to get into that habit of tracking these expenses, tracking your income and your expenses, and making sure it's going to the things that matter most to you. If this information is helpful to you, please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're reminded to come back on a daily basis. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.